Krishna. So, why do women stay in abusive relationships and often hide this from others? Well, this is pretty much summed up in what's called the cycle of abuse, which I have here on my screen for you all to see. So, in any relationship, it starts off with a honeymoon phase, even healthy relationships where everybody's on their best behavior, wanting to put their best foot forward, hiding the not so good stuff. But the difference in abusive relationships is that after some time, eventually this honeymoon phase builds into some sort of tension, which can look like insults, threats, jealousy, accusations, fault finding, etc. And then that tension builds to a certain point and an explosion happens. And the explosion can look like many different things, such as yelling, swearing, physical abuse, even the silent treatment, throwing things, intimidation. And then after the explosion, the abuser usually recognizes kind of, oh no, I can't keep behaving in this way if I want to keep this person. So he circles back to the honeymoon phase with a lot of romantic gestures, perhaps, or being more thoughtful, helping out around the house, maybe even some apologies. And in the meantime, in the honeymoon phase, she's feeling hopeful, relieved, maybe a little bit skeptical, but mostly she's just thinking, phew, like he's not acting this way anymore. And maybe this time it'll actually be different and he'll keep being the good person that I fell in love with. But inevitably, the tension starts to build again, where she might start to feel anxious, withdraw, feel isolated. She'll probably have that walking on eggshell kind of experience where she's just trying hard to please and prevent another big explosion from happening. But inevitably, because the abuse and the explosion is out of her control, the tension builds to a certain point again, and the explosion happens, in which case she's, of course, trying to protect herself. She perhaps gives in to her partner. She gets hurt physically, emotionally. She feels trapped. She probably even feels embarrassed for having stayed and having this happen again when she was so hopeful that it wouldn't. But then inevitably, the abuser recognizes again, oh no, I can't keep acting this way, otherwise she won't stay with me. So here we are circling back around to another honeymoon phase, back with all the romantic gestures, the apologizing, helping out. You get the idea. So this is the cycle of abuse, and this is what keeps very intelligent women from all walks of life in abusive relationships, because we all want to hope that in this honeymoon phase, this means that the person we've come to know and love is actually going to be the person that we fell in love with, that we hoped he would be all along. And it's just too hard to think that he's going to keep doing these bad behaviors again, and it's easier to feel hopeful. So that's what keeps very intelligent women, and any women for that matter, in abusive relationships. And it's important to note that in this honeymoon phase, this is actually considered abuse as well, because he's not doing these things out of the goodness of his heart. He's doing these things to maintain control. Again, if I keep acting this explosive way, she's not going to stay with me, so I better do these things to keep her. So it's not, the intention isn't pure or authentic or genuine. So in that sense, we can't really trust it very easily. And we should always be skeptical if we're noticing this cycle of abuse, because the honeymoon phase isn't coming from a sincere place most of the time. So that's the cycle of abuse. And furthermore, like another reason is that victims of abuse will fiercely defend their abusive partner. And this can be because she might feel loyalty to her partner for things that he's done for her, like getting her out of a bad situation or providing for her, or, often an abuser is some type of rescuer and she feels indebted to him. So in that way, she doesn't feel like she can acknowledge the abuse, or maybe she doesn't feel like she has other options due to financial limitations or not a lot of social support. And so that can also be another reason why women end up staying in abusive relationship. Another reason is that a lot of the time women aren't confident that they want to leave, even if the abuse keeps happening and they keep going through that cycle again and again. And so because they're going to stay, they don't want their friends and family or other congregation members at the temple thinking that my partner is a bad person or a bad devotee, because then they would get that pressure to leave, or they would face that awkwardness or tension in social situations that when other devotees know what's going on. And that's often too painful or overwhelming for victims to face. And plus the honeymoon phase from the beginning of the relationship, or times when he does nice things, often feels confusing as well, because she's thinking, hey, like some of the time he's really good and maybe he's just going to keep being that way. And realistically, nobody's 100% good or bad. And so that's not the point. The point is that abuse is never okay. There's never an excuse for it. So in that way, we have to take it seriously. But yes, a huge reason, especially in our communities, is this fear of others seeing the abuser in a negative light, especially if she decides to stay with him. And other times it's just because she's afraid that she won't be believed by members of the community, because unfortunately that has been the case for many women who might present this to a temple authority, a temple president, or something like that. They just either don't take it seriously, they don't get believed, or they feel like this devotee, the abuser, is a wonderful devotee because either he holds a position of authority at the temple, maybe he does a lot of service, he's a great kirtaniya, or he's the head pujari, or something like that, where he looks like such a pure devotee on the outside, so it would be so hard to believe that he could be anything else. Or maybe that temple president feels so indebted to that abusive devotee that he doesn't want to do anything, or maybe there's nobody else to take over the service. So there's a lot of complex factors like that that keep women from leaving, or even hiding it from others as well. And another thing, of course, change is scary, and sometimes it doesn't feel, like I said, there are any options to leave, and it's such a big shift for women, and that can also keep them in the situation. And we want to reassure them that it's okay to not leave right away. If somebody comes up to you and presents that they're going through some kind of intimate partner abuse, we don't want to push them or force them into leaving, because that might make them feel even more isolated, that they're not pleasing us or making us happy if they don't leave right away. And so we want to recognize that eventually it's likely that they'll leave if they keep receiving that unconditional support and care and non-judgment for staying, because we know there are all types of good reasons that women end up staying in abusive relationships. And if we judge them, that's just going to further perpetuate this victim type of stigma that, you know, victims of abuse are weak and don't have enough strength. And that's absolutely not the case. There are just a lot of complicated factors that make it really difficult sometimes for women to leave abusive situations. And in summary, I would want to leave this one point of recognizing that even the most intelligent and capable women fall into abusive relationships. Like, contrary to what a lot of people think, there's no one type of abused woman, you know, somebody that's weak or meek and mild. That's not the case at all. All types of women fall into these situations, unfortunately, because of that cycle of abuse, because it feels so confusing when we see this eventual abuser as this honeymoon type of partner, doing all of the wonderful things, maybe being a great devotee, having a good sadhana, doing a lot of service at the temple, or again, a lot of romantic gestures, things like that. It becomes really confusing because it's hard to reconcile with those two sides of a person. And again, it's the human nature to want to see the good in somebody that we love or somebody that we're attached to. So we really want to get out of that place of blaming women or blaming the victim, thinking that only weak or unintelligent women find themselves in these positions. That's absolutely not the case. And we really want to break that stigma and recognize that there are all types of valid reasons that women end up staying in abusive situations, and we don't want to judge them for that. And we want to break the stigma and let women know in our society that it is safe to tell somebody, and they're not going to be judged or pushed to do something that they don't want to do. And that will help women to hide the abuse less and less, hopefully. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.